Physical activity and nutrition are critical to the development of children K through 8. Studies have shown that when a child receives 60 minutes of exercise per day can increase their academic performance, their health performance, and their social performance. And so integrating that 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon of exercise, of walking or biking to and from school becomes very important. Because they've had that physical activity, it does aid the teacher to be able to help the child learn, not being distracted, but actually being able to focus better.
If students choose to walk and bike to school in the morning rather than getting in the carpool line, it helps alleviate traffic, saves on fuel consumption, and also helps with air pollution.
They're looking both ways.
Teachers are our front line. They are our cheerleaders and advocates, and they help encourage students. The teachers play a very important role in the Safe Routes to School program. They're adding the walking and biking to school safety instruction to their curriculum. We've had pedometer challenges through their math lessons, and they wore pedometers just to count their steps. The kids get very excited about it, and they want to participate.
My kids and I walk to school in the morning. It's a 1-mile walk. I think that it's great that there's this huge community initiative to get kids moving. I think it's so important that exercise becomes routine early so that we have healthy children who will become healthy adults.
As a town planner, I'm responsible for establishing the partnerships.
We work with the municipality on building the facility, the sidewalk, the shared use path, the crosswalk, and then involving the people of the community. The teachers throughout the state are receiving this program very holistically. They're usually the greatest champion at the school. It's always one thing to drive a desk in Raleigh, and it's another thing to be a teacher who has to teach the curriculum and understand it and be responsible for the health, safety, and welfare of that child. And if we can improve that, then we're all that much better.
And that means, that's my cue when the lights go on. Good morning. My name is John Merrow, education correspondent for the PBS Newshour, and have been reporting on education for the past 40 years. But I'm also a former teacher in high school, college, and federal prison. Our question is, our issue is the exodus. Why are teachers leaving? Is it money, benefits, lack of support, lack of appreciation, maybe better teaching jobs in some other state or in some other county? And somebody said to me, well, you know, this exodus is not that big a deal. Think of all the people who used to teach who went on to do something else. Lyndon Johnson, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Sting, Alexander Graham Bell, Clara Barton, even Lizzie Borden was a teacher. Well, that didn't turn out so well. So, but I'd like to know, I'd like to disrupt you momentarily. I'd like to know about this audience. I'd like everyone who at one point in his or her life, and perhaps, and even now, has been or is a teacher. So if you are or were a teacher, please stand up. I see, and remain standing if you would. And now there are hundreds and hundreds of people who are participating online, and I would like those of you who online also to stand up. You probably don't realize that we can see you. Okay, that's good. Okay, so no, don't sit down, don't sit down, don't sit down. This exercise is not over. So now those of you who have left teaching, are no longer teaching, you may sit down. So the people who are still standing are still teaching. That's correct? Okay. So now those of you who, if you got a better offer, would leave, or are thinking about leaving just because you've had enough, I want you to sit down. So if you think you're looking for an exit, you take one if it came along. Sit down. So what we have now standing are the men and women who are in for the long haul. And I, as a former teacher, think the rest of us should applaud those folks. Because, and now everyone will sit, yeah. It's probably a little known number, but, and maybe I should make it a quiz. What percentage of the American people, all of us, from just born to grown old, what percent are public school teachers? Anybody want to? Well, it's 1%. 1 out of every 100 Americans teaches in our public school system. I mean, teachers are the other 1%. They're not the Wall Street 1% making hundreds of millions of dollars. They're the other 1%. So now the situation here in this wonderful state, which I have been coming to for a long time and count myself as a member of the Jim Hunt fan club, the situation here is not good. 14.3% of teachers left their jobs in North Carolina last year. Last year we have data for. The highest turnover rate was actually 35%. Can you imagine replacing 35% of your workforce in a single year? And what if many of those who are leaving are among our best and brightest and most dedicated, which I think is quite often the case. And that brings me very easily to this panel. The 6 women and men are here to share their stories, and maybe they can help us understand why successful, high-performing, world-class teachers are leaving the classroom or leaving the classrooms of North Carolina. Now here's the deal. I will begin with some questions of my own. We talked backstage and talked about having lots of answers, but my experience as a moderator is that generally speaking, the audience has much better questions than I do. And so you're invited to work with the leader at your table and send up some questions. And I have a device up here which will, if it all works well, I'll see your questions and we'll do my best to ask. I'll ask as many as possible. So let's welcome to the stage, and I'm just going to go this way, and there will not be a quiz afterward on this. But Jen Coletti taught 10th and 12th grade English and journalism for 4 years at East Chapel Hill High School in Chapel Hill, in the Chapel Hill Carborough School District. She's currently working as a communications advisor for a global health nonprofit, so one former teacher. Next to her, Vivian Connell. Vivian, she taught high school for 18 years, leaving her last position at Providence High School in Charlotte-Mecklenburg District to pursue a legal and policy career, to go to law school. It's important to know she was offered a clerkship with the North Carolina Supreme Court, turned that down instead to work in education policy. So she's gone from the classroom, but she's connected to education. Next, David Richardson taught for 6 years in Johnson and Wake counties, including serving on the student support team and as chair of the Spanish department at Millbrook Senior High School in Wake County. He's currently enrolled in Duke University's Medical School Physician Assistant Program, a 24-month program. Well, we'll find out why. Sharon Boxley has been teaching for 11 years between her time in North Carolina's Greene County schools and Maryland's Prince George's County schools. She left North Carolina last year, went back to teach in Maryland, and I hope we'll find out why she chose Maryland over this great state. Deanna Kallenberg has taught in Cumberland County schools for the past 7 years. She's the Title I reading and math teacher at Alderman Road Elementary School. She will be leaving, unless you can change her mind. She will be leaving the classroom after this year to pursue a career in speech language pathology. And her husband, Mark Kallenberg, taught 1st and 4th grades for the past 8 years in Cumberland County schools, currently at Alderman Road Elementary School. He will be leaving the classroom after this year to pursue a career in speech pathology. Now, he's one of those rare men in elementary schools. Arguably, he's what we need more of, not less of. So maybe he's the one we should really try to persuade to stay. But so let's try to get a sample of this. Why? Let's start with the husband and wife. Why are you two leaving? Is it money?
Both of us are in grad school currently, and we've put too much investment into our education over the past 3 years to consider staying for mostly pay reasons.
That's why we initially went back to school. We saw the pay freeze begin, and we waited to see if maybe it was going to make a change. Maybe it was just a 1 year or 2 year thing. And then when it turned into how long it has been, we decided we needed to pursue something else. So
you've had a 1.1% raise in 5 years?
5 years. And that's really tough when we're both teachers, and we want to have a family of our own, and we want to provide for them the same that our parents did for us.
If I may ask, what's your take-home pay together?
Well, each of us a month, our take-home after taxes and retirement and health insurance is around $1,850 a month.
That's $18,500 a month?
I wish. No, $1,850 a month.
Each of you?
Yes, times two.
You're just rolling in. Well, as a serious question, if the governor had said, I don't want to lose you, and said, what would it take? What amount of money, is there an amount of money which would have kept you in the classroom?
I don't think we would have ever gone back to grad school if our steps would have increased each year.
Oh.
So
we both love teaching, and we met at our elementary school. It's become our community where we live in, and it's sad for us to go, but as a family, we have to make that decision.
Sharon, what's your story? Why are you choosing Maryland over North Carolina?
Pretty much it's about the same reason. Over the years, as I learned, we were called a teacher, and I learned to call myself a professional educator. And during that time, I'm teaching students and I'm teaching myself, and I'm going back to school so that I can teach these students to be better at what I do. I decided that I needed to be paid my worth, and North Carolina couldn't do that at the time, so I chose to go back.
So how much more do you make in Maryland than you would have made had you stayed here?
It's at least anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 difference in pay between Maryland and North Carolina.
$15,000 to $20,000 more a year
Yes.
in Maryland and North Carolina?
Yes.
Some of those people who said they were staying maybe coming up to talk to you after this session. That's astounding. You went back and forth. You were up there and back here, and then...
I did. For personal reasons, I came home and wanted to be home when I came home.
Home is?
North Carolina. I am born and bred in North Carolina, love it with all my heart. Oh. But I'm an educator. I've gone to school. I went back to school at a later date. I didn't start out as 18, 19 in the teaching field. I decided to go back because I wanted to teach. And this is my career. This is what I do. And I need to be paid for my career and what I love to do. If I've got the passion to do it and to stick with it, I feel like I should be paid to do it.
So yesterday we heard Dan Pink talking about motivation. He said teachers have to be paid enough money so that that's not the thing they're worrying about. Are you now in that situation where you're paid so you don't spend all your time worrying about money, you can focus on?
Well, I've always focused on my students regardless of the pay. I want to make that very clear. I have always been a passionate teacher, but we are human beings and we work to have the best and want the best and do the best, so we expect to be paid for doing the best.
Do you take a low salary as a sign of disrespect? Okay, to ask an answer.
I'm going to be honest, yes, because, what you've got to understand is what teaching takes away from you also. I watched, because my kids were already grown when I came into the teaching field, I watched my colleagues who were getting married, who had children. I watched what it was taking away from the home. I often asked them, how do you do it? Because I didn't have those worrations when I walked in my house. But I was still being unfair to myself because I went home with nothing but work every day, every night. Did the grading through the week, the lesson planning through the weekend. That's 7 days a week of my life.
One of the things I think we should have in this age of technology, a steady cam, a 24-hour steady cam in the home of a teacher, so the rest of the world could see that, you know, they don't come home and turn the tube on and watch Judge Judy. They come home and do a whole lot of work to get ready for the next day or the next week. David, why?
I think to say that money is not an issue is kind of naive, but for me it was more the lack of autonomy in my classroom. It was the general distrust that I feel the community and the state has for its teachers to make decisions that are the best decisions for their students in their classroom. I think no one knows that better than the person that is in that classroom and with those students 8 hours a day.
Lack of autonomy, you mean someone was telling you what page to be on? And
yes, quite literally. But aside from that, just the general micromanagement. I mean, you know, be here for your morning duty, be here for your lunch duty, make sure you transition to the meeting to plan meetings.
Don't we have to do that so we know you don't slack off?
It's probably true. In my case. No, I think most people, you know, that choose to go into the teaching profession are aware of the pros and cons of that profession. They understand that that pay is not going to be the #1 driving factor to an education. But at the end of the day, when you do not trust those people to make the decisions that they've been trained to make for their students in the best interest of those students, it's just insult to injury.
So you said lack of autonomy, but there are a lot of wise people, including Pasi Sahlberg, who was here, to talk about teaching and schooling as a team sport.
Right.
Do you feel, is it a team sport for you?
So I think that that teaching is definitely a team sport, if you will. It's certainly not something that you're going to go to your room and close your door. I think those days are gone. But at the end of the day, I think that teachers do not feel empowered. I think teachers feel almost robotic in the movements that they make throughout the day. And it really takes the human aspect, which is so important in preparing students to be the leaders that they need to be and that they want to be. You have to have a more humanistic interaction with those people than we get.
So can I infer from this that there's no amount of money that would take you back into the classroom unless the other deal changed?
Unless what?
Unless the other thing changed, so respect for...
Right.
I'm sorry. That's good. Okay. Vivian, and your reasons for leaving?
I think mine are somewhat more complicated.
So we know, 18 years as a teacher.
Yes, and over 2 decades in teaching abroad and having gone back to get my master's and get ed certified after having an undergraduate degree in the liberal arts, the much maligned liberal arts, the degree that got me into Carolina law. For me, it was the indignity. It was the perpetual indignity of being required, having a mandate from people who did not understand my job, did not know my students, to implement policies.
You're not talking about your school principal?
No, I'm not. I'm talking more, well, first I'm talking about No Child Left Behind. I'm talking about 8 years of test, measuring, tests that purported to measure qualitative measures, qualitative things that you can't measure.
So
how much do you love your children? Can you measure that?
Had No Child Left Behind not come around, might you still be in the classroom?
I don't know. I knew that the testing and trying to measure things and measure teacher performance by bubble test was a bad idea. And as a high school teacher, when the kids came to me after 8 years of that and couldn't, brilliant children, honors kids coming from very affluent populations with every advantage, did not know grammar, were writing sentences, sentence fragments, because that hadn't been a required thing to test on the test they took in elementary school. So they weren't coming with the rigorous education that all of us received long before we were tested to death. And I was being asked to take them from 0 to 80 to go from not knowing 7th grade grammar to being ready for AP 11 language and comp. The job was much more difficult. The kids didn't have the skills. And then we got a wave, instead of a Linda Darling Hammond return to common sense, we got market-based reform, which has been coming at us.
No, wait a minute. You're getting away from your own story.
Okay. Well, let me get back to my own story and tell you that I was tired of not having a voice. No one listens to teachers.
So you went to law school.
Yes.
So suddenly you were a student.
Yes.
After years of teaching. Which is harder, being a student? I mean, law school is supposed to be pretty tough. Was it harder to be a teacher or harder to be a student?
It was much harder to be a teacher.
Why?
And my law school, people talked about how hard law school was, and I always just sort of chuckled. Why? I loved learning. I could manage my time. I got to choose my courses. I was in control of my own destiny, and I was doing something that I believed in at law school.
That sense of, you see the threads emerging here, that sense of being respected, that sense of having some control over your life clearly mattered all the way down the room. And let's find out what happens with Jen.
All right. So I echo many of the sentiments that all the wonderful folks before me have shared. For me, it came down to lack of a career path in teaching and salary. I worked in communications before deciding to go back and get my master's in teaching. After getting my master's, I took a job teaching English and journalism at the high school level. And in the 4 years that I taught, I was kind of consistently and increasingly disheartened by the pay freeze, by the lack of any additional reward or new responsibilities for a job well done. The career path seemed to just be, you do a great job, more work gets tossed on you, but with no additional compensation or other appreciation.
So it was mostly, it was money and this sense of purpose, or?
Yeah. It was both.
Did you meet Sharon? Do you want to talk to her about Maryland?
So I started looking for other work, and during my 4th year of teaching, I received a job offer from a non-governmental organization that's based in Chapel Hill. And as I waited for that job offer to come in, I thought, what would it take? You know, I am starting to get more comfortable teaching. We'll see what a communications job offer will be.
Are you making more now?
I took a 50% raise when I left teaching. It amounted to about $22,000 more. Okay. I looked at the state salary schedule.
So if we were to offer you $26,000 to come back to teaching?
I very well might.
You might. So, okay, so there's a point, folks. Money does talk. Money does talk. Okay, so I want to know, and anybody can have this question. I mean, any of these people, not you guys. What do you miss most about teaching?
I miss the letters I got at the end of the year from my students. I missed the the blessing of the opportunity to have a profound impact on individual students' lives. You have changed my life. This book changed my life. When we had this discussion about women in theocratic Islam, it profoundly changed me. And every year I would get notes.
It's that one-to-one and that sense that it's well, again, we were talking about yesterday, meaningful work.
Correct.
David?
I think I miss opening college acceptance letters with my students. I think I miss, knowing where they're going and what they're doing is partly because in some way I've influenced them or motivated them. I miss the time that I got to spend with my students outside of school, getting to know them as people. It's hard to say what one thing do you miss from teaching.
Jen, you just out. Go ahead. Yeah, what do you miss most?
I miss the aha moments in the classroom where something clicks, someone says something brilliant, someone gets it, and there's no more immediate gratification or recognition of the effort that you're putting in.
Could you count on one of those every day, or 10 a day, or one a week?
Yeah, at least one a day.
At least one a day, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still in the classroom, but as a teacher, and because I've got all of my colleagues sitting out here now, and you can probably understand what I'm saying, but I miss being the teacher. I miss being the person who can choose what I need to do for my students in the classroom. I am so tired of this cookie cutter, do it this way, and you don't know anything about my students. So just because I'm not out of the classroom does not mean that I don't miss being a teacher.
It's interesting, I haven't taught for 40 years, but I certainly understand all that sense of a connection to a kid, or maybe a parent wrote in and said, you know, my kid likes to come to school and he never, just that sense that you touched somebody's life in some way. If you had it to do over again, and you're at a different range of ages, but if you had it to just do over again, had a do-over, would you go into teaching, or would you just decide, okay, speech pathology, or okay, NGO, or okay, law school? Lawyer?
I definitely would do it again.
Would you do it again?
I would, because I didn't really even know the speech pathology career before I was a teacher. I met the SLP at our school, and I saw what she did. But it has definitely shaped who I am now, and without it, I wouldn't be the same person. So I would definitely do it again in a heartbeat.
I agree with Deanna. I would do it again. It's how we met, so I wouldn't trade that in for anything. So.
He'd be in big trouble if he hadn't. But, yeah, really?
No, I was just going to say I miss the classroom every day. And as I've explored different opportunities following law school, the people with whom I speak, when I start talking about education, they always say, that's what you have to do. I miss it every day. The teacher for whom I do
Would you do it again?
I would absolutely do it again.
You'd start off as a teacher.
And I want to say this, the teacher with whom I work, the other day, she's one of the most energetic, passionate teachers at Chapel Hill High, and she said, I said, I miss teaching, I loved it. She said, I love it more than I love breathing, but I don't know how much longer I can do it. She can't afford internet at home. David, would you do it again?
Absolutely, I would do it again. I think the experiences that you get as a teacher, the connections that you make, the way that you learn to, carry yourself, and all of those things that you start out in your first profession and learn, what better place to learn than in the teaching field, where you're interacting with, your leaders in the community, you're interacting with parents. It's an invaluable experience. But I think it's also important to realize that for many of us, and I'm not sure about for Vivian, long term, that I know that I will go back and teach in a medical program somewhere. Oh. So the likelihood of me going back and teaching in a high school is very slim. But for many people that really are passionate about teaching, the secondary classroom is not where that has to stop.
I agree with you, David. I would like to go back at the college level at some point in the speech pathology field.
Jen?
Yeah, I would do it again, certainly, and I would go back if financial circumstances were different.
I want to ask you about your training. One of the things, certainly I as a reporter understand that the real Achilles heel is teacher training. I've been spending enough time in enough institutions to see, but I'm curious, sort of firsthand, speak a little bit about the appropriateness and adequacy of your own training to be a classroom teacher. Go ahead, Jen.
So I did the Master's in Teaching at UNC in Chapel Hill. There's one where the athletes can read, and there's one where they can't read. There weren't any athletes in this program.
Send him back to New York. Sorry.
So there was a student teaching internship as part of that training. I felt like that was the most valuable part. Could there have been much more rigorous teaching of methods? Yes.
I'm not sure what you just said.
There could have been much more rigorous preparation in terms of some of the practical day-to-day how-to. More
challenging.
Yeah.
By the way, I never say rigorous. Rigorous is, if you look it up, it means harsh and unyielding, like rigor mortis. So challenging is the word of my preference.
Could have been more challenging.
More challenging. Anybody speak to your training, the adequacy, appropriateness.
My program was excellent. I went to a college in Virginia. I went to Radford University, and I felt as soon as I graduated, I hit the ground running. And I'm very grateful for having that experience.
I'm still doing it, so I guess my education was wonderful. But I do have to talk about when I went back to school and the students that were in my class with me went through all of these years, and we got up until the last, when you had to do your internship, and to see those kids say, I can't do this, after taking all of those classes, it was heartbreaking. And so I'm just saying, maybe even with that, we need to have a way that we can prepare our next generation of teachers to see what's out there before you invest all of this time, because it's a rough road when you enter that classroom for the first time. You can have all the teaching in the world, but if you don't have the mentality to be able to stand in that classroom in front of those students, it's heartbreaking.
Generally, what we hear is that for first-year teachers, and this was true when I started 40-some years ago, it was a sink or swim thing. There wasn't much in the way of support. Now, you're a different age range. Was it sink or swim for you, or were you mentored?
Our county has a great beginning teacher program, and they assign you to a mentor who's on your grade level, who helps walk you through the first year, and I thought they did a wonderful job.
Yeah. How about for you, Vivian? You were started earlier.
I went back. I graduated from college in '86, and I went back after having taught in Japan, and I sort of had the natural teacher instincts. You can tell I'm not shy. And I could handle the room, and I had taught in middle school. I went back to Furman as a little bit older teacher, and I received excellent education in education history and philosophy. I had a wonderful methods course of how to manage a classroom, plan lessons.
When you went in to start teaching?
Yes, they already had mentor programs in place, and I had a very supportive administration who always checked in and had new teacher meetings. I never felt that I was thrown to the dogs.
And I would like to add to that.
Yeah, please.
I feel like my program, first off, I was very fortunate to be one of the last teaching fellows in the state. I went to Elon University and graduated there in 2005, and I feel like you're getting a phenomenal education, and you will not, or you did get a phenomenal education. It was a wonderful experience. The training, the opportunities, both by that university and through the Teaching Fellows program itself, were excellent.
Yeah. Let me ask a personal question. How did you tell your kids? I mean, clearly you were all connected to at least some, maybe of most of the young people who were your charge. How did you explain to them that you were leaving the profession or leaving this? Okay, what did you say, Jen?
Yeah, that was the hardest part of leaving. I had several students cry in every class. And I explained that it was an opportunity that I needed to take, and they all said, we totally understand. Yeah. We know how hard it is. I mean, kids got it. Kids said, yeah, you should. Good for you.
But they cried, or some cried.
But they were sad to...
What are you going to say, you two?
We're still in the classroom,
right.
So, I mean, I've already told my kids I'm going to go into speech language. They understand we have a speech teacher at our school, so I think they don't really understand in the long run what's going to happen, that we're going to be out of our personal school and they won't see us next year. But they think we're still going to be in the school system helping kids.
How did you feel saying that? Does any part of you feel like you're betraying them, or?
No, I see a lot of the kids in the community still. We live in our community. I coach at the high school, so the first class I taught is going to be freshmen next year, so I'm looking forward to being able to still be out there and see those kids.
Deanna, have you told
One of the things you said, what are you going to miss the most? Those relationships, not just with the children, but with the parents, too. Mark and I live in the community where we teach. So we're right down the road. We see them often at the gas station and Walmart and all those places, and I hope we still will see them. But that's going to be a big change for us. We've made a lot of close friends through the parents of our students. And it's going to be difficult to tell them. But a lot of them know, because this has been a 4-year process for us. So,
David?
I knew that I was, I'm sorry.
Vivian, David?
I want David first.
I knew that I was leaving the classroom in 2006. I started taking the science prerequisites that I needed to go back to medical school. And I share that openly with my students. I think, it's important to be a lifelong learner. And so for some people, that's, continuation in the path that they're on, and for some people, that's a change.
So you felt like you were modeling
Absolutely.
How
Absolutely.
did the kids react?
You know, I think most of them were understanding. I think on a
These
whole,
were high school kids.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And they I think embraced the opportunity to have someone who was honest and raw and real with them about, you know, this is a great profession. It's something that you should consider going into, but do your homework, you know, and make sure that you know what you're getting into if you want to do this, and realize that there are no bad decisions with respect to education. If you go in to get a degree and you teach and you want to change, there's always an opportunity for you. So I think just keeping the conversation open and honest with them was something they could appreciate.
So how did you personally feel? Did you feel like you were, I mean, you're doing something for yourself, but did you feel like you were abandoning them?
At the end of the day, I told myself if I was going to work as hard as I was working as a teacher, I was going to work that hard for myself.
Vivian?
My students were incredibly supportive. I told them I was going to practice what I preached. I was the advisor of a club that my students had asked me to start 3 years earlier called Voices Activated, which encouraged young people to become, to research current issues and to engage in the civic debate in the process and they were doing that. It was a wonderful experience. They lobbied for the environment. They raised money for the genocide victims in Sudan. They raised money.
How did you feel?
Well, I felt great because they encouraged me. They said, Ms. Connell, we're so proud of you. You're going to go out there and you're going to model what you've been asking us to do. They actually, I've received some accolades here and there, but the greatest one was when that group of kids voted me most inspirational teacher. They understood.
Yeah. So
they understood.
I don't know your marital child status, whether you have children, if so, whatever. But
we're actually expecting in May. He's due in May.
Here we go. Congratulations. But that's a secret, by the way. So keep it down. Would you want your children to become teachers? You know, son, don't let your children grow up to be cowboys. What about teachers?
I would explain the profession to them so they know. If it's their true passion, then yes, I'm not going to stop him from doing anything that he wants to do within, you know, relative terms. But if that's what he really wants to do and that's what he feels is his profession, then I wouldn't stop him.
So did you just tell us it's a boy?
It is a boy.
We learn. I'm a good reporter. I know how to dig and get this important information out. But Sharon, would you want a child of yours to become a teacher?
I am a teacher, and I teach kids to do what they believe in their heart. So no, you don't stifle what a child wants to do. And just like all of us, they will live and learn. If it's a passion for them, they'll stick with it, they'll stay in it. But if they feel like it's not, then they have that opportunity to make a change. So no, I would not ever tell anyone not to become a teacher.
You know, we've got 1,200 teachers, superintendents, school board members, policy people. Let's fix the system while we've got about 5 minutes left. That should be plenty of time. Right now, it strikes me that we value what we measure instead of measuring what we value. So what advice would you give these folks? How do we get away from this test-obsessed system that we have? Is there like a first step? Joe.
Yeah, so I really have to go back to what Daniel Pink said yesterday, that we have to raise pay enough so that pay no longer is an issue, and then we can tackle all of the other important questions that we've been discussing the last day and a half. But until we do that...
So start with money. Okay, well then let's do the second step, because we're not going to worry about money. We're making enough, so that's not our constant concern. What happens next?
Sure. So Governor McCrory yesterday mentioned creating a professional pathway to keep great leaders in the building, in the school, in the classroom, but also afford them professional opportunities for growth, development, additional earnings over the course of their career.
That doesn't get us away with this obsession with numbers. I mean, what we have is a system of regurgitation. You pour the stuff into the kid's head and they give it back to you on a test. How do you in a world today where kids live are growing up in Think about it this way. When I was a kid, when many of you were kids, you had to go to school because that's where they kept the knowledge. Is in the heads of the teachers or in the textbooks. That's just gone. It's now 24/7. But it's not knowledge, it's information. So how do we teach our kids to sift through this information and figure out what's true? And hopefully, separate wheat from chaff and hopefully choose the wheat. So I'm curious, how do you move away from, yes, we need more money, yes, we need more respect, but that bigger question of only valuing what we measure instead of measuring what we value. Yeah.
I've got to say, going back to David's point earlier about being respected as a professional, we need to, and I know we're going to hear about this next, professionalize this field and treat teachers just like any other profession where you are paid according to the value of your work, you are trusted, you are given a career path to grow, and take away all of the focus on numbers. People who are paid well for their work and feel respected are going to raise the quality of the education system from the ground up.
And giving the classroom teacher a voice. So often, giving the classroom teacher a voice. So often things look good on paper, all the testing,
So
but they don't see how it impacts.
To you when they were developing the Common Core and said, what are you?
Well, that's not entirely true. The county did develop teams to help put us on track. But as far as how much standardized testing we're giving our kids, I think we're missing just how much time is spent doing testing instead of instruction. The classroom teacher's voice, I think, sometimes is not as loud as others.
Vivian.
I want to say that we need to stop playing tug of war and we need to play Odyssey of the Mind. There are good ideas. There's room for everything. There's room for good charters. There's room for good business and job training. And we need to do STEM, but we don't need to abandon the other things that we value in traditional learning. And if we all come together and we're all at the table, as has been the case in North Carolina until very recently, we can play Odyssey of the Mind and come up with a sustainable solution. When you play tug of war, the other side just gets dragged through the mud. One side wins, the other side gets dragged through the mud. So we need to take the best of everything that we're hearing. Specifically, my suggestion is that we add 2 seats to every local local school board and the state school board, and have a teacher elected and an administrator or 2 teachers. We've got plenty of people from business. We need that. We need to know where we need to send our students so that they can have jobs and contribute to the economy and contribute to the social fabric. But you've got the main people interfacing with students who don't have an actual empowered voice at the table of policy making, and that has to change.
Vivian, give us a perspective. You've taught for 16 years that. And Deanna mentioned test prep. Was there a change in the emphasis on testing from your first year to the year you left? And explain a little bit about it. Yeah.
Mine? I did not teach in a testing grade. I saw the results of having our 9th graders do bubble tests for No Child Left Behind, and then they came to 10th grade and they couldn't write. There was no motivation for the 9th grade teacher to teach them to write. So I saw that sort. We did the North Carolina State Writing Test, and our goal was to keep teaching our rigorous literature curriculum and what I would call academic writing and more normal writing, and to spend as little time possible jumping through the hoops to teach the kids to write a definition paper. Who's ever written a definition paper in college or necessary for their doctorate?
As you survey, and we are running out of time. In fact, that says we're out of time. But as you survey the field that you are in for a little bit longer, you are still in, and you all left, and not just North Carolina, but do you think we're moving in the right direction?
This conference is the right direction.
Mm-mm. I'm sorry?
This forum is definitely the right direction.
I'm not going to accept that as an answer. Is it? I mean, just as a general, yes. I mean, I agree with you.
I feel like we're kind of at a standstill. I feel like there's been a lot of discussion lately of moving in a good direction, but it's kind of unclear of what the best direction should be for everyone involved, new teachers and veteran teachers.
Yeah. Sharon, you stayed in the classroom. Are you hopeful that this new Common Core state standards and so on, is that going to push us in the right direction?
I'm hoping it is, but with the new Common Core, I see, even in Maryland, that we haven't been given the time to saturate in it. I mean, you know, with everything that a teacher has to do, including all of the paperwork that comes along with your job, how do you learn this new curriculum, you know, so that you can be ready for it, so that you can give it to your students? Because please understand, we still have students who are struggling in every state. So something else has to be done, because we're not doing something right now, because I'm sitting here with a classroom full of students who are still 1 or 2 or 3 grades behind, and you expect me to get them here in 1 year. It's not possible. I'm a reading specialist. That's what I do. So you can't expect that. So we've got to come back to the table and figure out a way to help the kids that we've already let down.
There's the mantra that you hear is teachers are they're the key. They're the single most important aspect of education. If you just have a great teacher, everything is fine. Do you accept that? I mean, it occurs to me that you're getting set up when people say that. But I just wonder what you as teachers, when you hear people say, oh, you're the most important people in society, and then we pay you $30,000. But what is your take when you hear those words?
I think sometimes you just feel like people are kind of talking out of the side of their mouth, and that's just to be frank about it. And I would argue that probably the only people in education currently who really know what they value or what to value are the teachers themselves. You see legislators, you see community members all throwing something into the hat, and anything that comes down the pipeline we try to implement. So I don't to say that we're heading in the right direction, I think is an untruth. I still think that we're kind of floundering. And so I think that while I'd like to be hopeful, I think most teachers are. I also don't want to be misleading or misguiding. I mean, there's a purpose to why we're all here. And I think that if we were heading in the right direction, we wouldn't still be brainstorming. And so I don't think that we're headed in the right direction.
So, I mean, there's some wonderful takeaways here. No more tug of war, but, it's a team sport, and these guys have to be on the team. Ronald Reagan used to say about the Soviet Union, trust but verify. Maybe that should be the mantra in education. We've got to trust, and right now we don't, from what these teachers and former teachers have told us. So trust but verify. That I introduce myself, and the only problem with introducing yourself is that the person who introduced you doesn't plug your book. And so I want to, and I'm plugging it by giving each of them a copy. It's called The Influence of Teachers.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
It's called The Influence of Teachers. These guys have been wonderful, and I would ask that you give it up for them. And, come on, up. Yeah, up. There we go. That's right. Come on. And I know I speak for them in saying that you all are a wonderful audience. When you get up here, when you do this sort of stuff, you can feel the audience. And we could feel that you all were paying attention. You were paying respect, which they don't get enough of in the classroom, but you were full of respect. And for that, we all thank you. So, ciao.